hair got short in sixth grade because I had a piece of hair that was just really short, and I got tired of it, so I just snapped it all off. There you go. I am going to get started right away. So it's 6 o'clock. I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. I am so very grateful that you folks have come out tonight to hear, I'm going to say presentation, but I really want it to be engaging. I want this to be a conversation. So as we go through the slides and you have questions or whatnot, just pipe up. My name is Senta Holmes. I'm the Community Resilience Outreach Coordinator with Elkhorn Area School District, and I lead the Elkhorn Area School District Resiliency Coalition. So we try to bring programs into the community, not only in our schools, but our businesses, our healthcare areas, to talk about resilience and ways that we can build that within our community through our kids, through adults, through business owners, librarians, civic organizations. So as I do say that, my card is out on the table. Please reach out to me if you think we need certain programs in our community or you want to help. I am open to anything. My thought is always we build a stronger community together. And I have Clayton here with me tonight. Clayton?
I'm Clay. Cool. Got it. Yeah, so I'm Clay. I'll share a little bit about myself. I have a degree in social work. So my just got my LCSW a couple of years ago. When I first went into the field, my primary role that I was going for, I did my internship for something called adventure therapy. So it was more a bit non-traditional style of therapy. Mostly what that would involve would be kind of these activities and roles that I would do with mostly youth, anywhere from ages 6 to 18 at that time. Once I completed that, I transferred up to a place north of here called New Vision Wilderness. It's a wilderness therapy program. There, my primary role was working with kids, adolescents, typically between the ages of 10 to 18. And these are the kids that would, maybe experience some type of trauma, early on trauma. I also worked a lot with adoption. And a lot of my roles was helping foster family attachment, relationships, and helping build resolve in the youth that I was working with up there. Did that for a long time, and I'll kind of share bits and pieces about that as we're kind of going through and how that might fit in. And then more recently, I found myself in a role with Health and Human Services. I am a therapist over there and primarily still working with a trauma focus or a trauma lens, but still meet with a variety of other youth, mostly youth this time, typically around ages 13 to 18, but I also see some young adults and that as well. So I guess that's a start.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Clayton. So as I shared earlier, I did the presentation as a guideline. I want to hit 3 pinpoints of instilling confidence in your children. As I was doing the presentation, I did a lot of self-reflection. And I will say the presentation is not only instilling your confidence in your children, but in yourself, in a peer, in your significant other. So even though we are focused on children and it gives you guidelines on how to look at that, look within yourself too. And I guess I'm sharing that it's always building resiliency anywhere where you can, where you see it. And the first and foremost is within yourself. So, all right, let's get started. Again, very informal. If you have any questions, just speak up. So the presentation is why build confidence in kids, how to build confidence in kids, and how does it impact kids. And you'll find that this will be on the handout that I give you if you wanted to follow. So we all know, all of you here are parents, I'm assuming. We know that it's not easy at all. Some days we're like, are we even communicating right to them? Am I talking to an alien? They're not working together with me. Why is that? All you do is just butt heads. Are we doing the right thing for our child? As we sometimes in the world that we live in, we compare ourselves to other people. And if I follow that child's reaction, is that going to help or harm that child? So in all of that, the one thing to remind yourself on helping you parent is being proactive, being consistent, being observant, calm, and being present with your child. And all those things are, 5 things are so easy to say, but we all know right here it's so difficult to do. Would you agree, Clayton? So there is a difference between self-confidence and self-esteem. Self-esteem is your own worth, the life experiences, appreciate and value yourself. Self-esteem refers to how we feel about ourselves, so it's inward, where self-confidence is outward facing. It's trusting oneself, feeling confident in circumstances and not others. So does that understand the differences between the two? And we're going to be talking about both of them. But so if we talk about self-confidence, it's life experiences and appreciates your own value. And self-confidence is the trust in what we are doing. Clayton, it's...
Yeah. So I think a lot of my material that I might chime in with a lot more is maybe like specific ways that I don't want to like go too early in some of our other
But
slides. That's really like on like, you know, what the difference is, and then
can you unmic yourself? Sorry.
No, thank you.
You're welcome.
There's going to be like specific ways that like we can try to implement some of those actions, like when we're trying to build self-esteem or self-confidence. You know, maybe not necessarily needing to distinguish between the two in the moment, but trying to find like specifics, something that's what's the word I'm trying to, accessible and applicable. So along kind of side of that might be like themes that we're talking about, like how can we present with a kid that, you know, when kids aren't blank slates, they don't come in to this world like a blank slate. They come in with their own personalities and behaviors and moods and things like that, as we all kind of know. So like as us as parents, then how can we interact with this kid in a way that can help foster self-esteem and self-confidence? We'll be kind of getting to as we kind of go along.
Okay. All right, let's go. So self-esteem facts. And when we always do a presentation, we want facts. And some of these are probably going to be very poignant. So self-esteem largely ties to a child's perception of their own appearance. We all know young teenagers, especially in the world that we're living in on social media, 44% of girls and 15% of boys feel that they need to lose weight in order to look better. It implies to many high school students have self-esteem and result of body image issues. 20% of teenagers will experience system of depression before they graduate from high school. High school students are facing incredible pressures. Low self-esteem can increase their risk for depression and anxiety. Boys and girls with low self-esteem are more likely to make poor choices. And those choices can be drinking, smoking, bullying, and 75% of girls do that, especially in high school. And they do get destructive. Recent research indicates that social media, and I think we all know that in this room, I do that as a parent, so I can't imagine the pressures that a child feels when they look at Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. Right here, in all my information is cited at the bottom, just so you can go back to it. Instagram is the most detrimental impact on individual self-esteem. Young people prefer to go on social media platforms so they can alter their pictures, make the teeth look whiter. I've done that. How many anybody else in this room have done that? Yeah. So if we're doing it, we know that the young ones are doing it. Also, we all have heard of cyberbullying, and that has increased significantly with social media. And a lot of this is stemming. We have those social media outlet platforms, right? And we always could say, well, we're teaching kids on how to use them. Absolutely. But there are people that are using them that have concerns and issues themselves. And a lot of that stems from self-esteem and self-confidence. And that's why these statistics are so high. And if we can start kids out young, having that self-confidence, no, that's not cockiness. That's not arrogance. It's being the person who they are and the self-assurance that will lower these statistics, hopefully. So in this slide, and there's a handout there, they talk about conscious and subconscious beliefs. And I'm going to start you out with the picture of the slide. And I think we forget that the only thing that we can control ourselves are our thoughts and actions. That's the only thing that we can control. And as a result of that, creates the feelings, right? So that's the self-confidence and the brains working together. So when we can control those thoughts and actions, that kind of goes back to why build confidence. You know, confidence provides the protection and to face life's challenges, gives that self-assurance, ability to try to face obstacles, and the skill sets to interact with another person, and the ability to deal with unexpected difficulties. So if we can understand the thoughts that we have and why we're having those thoughts, which creates feelings, and that's that triangle there, but those actions are where that change can happen. Anything you want to share?
Yeah, I'll kind of chime in on that one. So sometimes even as adults, like the thought of like sometimes even controlling our own thoughts seems a bit like, well, are you sure? Like, because I have some crazy thoughts sometimes. One thing that I would like to start with acknowledging is that we may all experience like moments of like automatic thoughts that just happen. So it's not necessarily just every single thought. It's sometimes the ability to recognize that we can always have a second thought or an additional thought on that matter. When we think about that and translate it to kids, especially like under the age of 10, impulsive, egocentric. They might just say whatever's on their mind. There might be immediate kind of impulses that they just follow through on because it's just in the kid's nature. So one is also recognizing to have age-appropriate understanding of when I am, talking to this kid about this thing, what kind of angle am I coming at it from? Is this something that was within their control, or was this maybe an immediate response to an event that happened? So trying to make sure that we can understand to our best of ability, can we make it more age-appropriate understanding from our response to the kid? It might be helpful if we try to think of examples too, so it's not so vague. I'll try to think of some as I kind of go along, but I don't have any at the moment, so okay. Let's keep going.
I think all of us here know we were their age at one point, and sometimes for me it's that. So to put ourselves in their shoes, and that's hard to do when we're like, what are you doing? Don't do that. Sometimes it's being that calm, that proactive, the 5 things that we shared in the beginning of the slide. So this is where my nerdiness comes in, and I love this part, the confidence in the brain. So the brain builds confidence using thoughts. Confident memories are linked to your brain on neurons in the neural network. Each time you remember a situation when you were confident, you strengthen the confident neural network. So when I was reading this, they said for one negative remark to a person, it takes about 7 positives to outrule that negative. And that's in an adult for understanding emotions and feelings. Can you imagine how it is for a kid to get that? So I guess that's why that positive aspect and that confidence talking to the kids is really vital. Neuroscience has shown that our brains have both neurogenesis, which we can make new neurons, and neuroplasticity. We can strengthen and weaken and change those connections of those neurons. So you can form neurons in your brain at any age. So that's where the science comes in, that you can learn anything at an age, maybe a little bit of a slower process, but you still can do it. You can change how much neurons in your brain connect. You can create new thinking patterns. You can strengthen the neurons in your brain. So because of the neurogenesis and the neuroplasticity, you can create more self-confidence and be specific in any situation, disciplining thoughts. So when you hear the folks that talk about hear affirmations at night when you go to bed and have that going on, or you have this, I don't know about you folks, but I have the sticky note of affirmations by my mirror to help me throughout the day. Those are igniting my neurons and creating more positive and refreshing that. So I think this is good stuff. Understanding on how the brain works.
Yeah. So one a metaphor that I usually like to think of is when you first start trying to like practice self-affirmations or something like that, they may not immediately click. They might feel like, oh, that was wrong, or that doesn't feel right, or I'm not feeling very positive today. So sometimes the goal isn't try to seek out the opposite end of it. It's trying to find a more realistic version of a positive self-affirmation, something that takes into account maybe sometimes that we can mess up, that we're human, and we're trying. Like I'm giving it my all right now. To each, we can kind of find our own message that really clicks with us, that gives a really realistic route. And I like to think of it like two roads that you're driving down. One's like a really familiar road. Maybe that road is like self-doubt. Maybe that road is negative self-thoughts. In kids, that might be the belief that I can't play with them. I might not be fun enough. They might not think I'm a enjoyable person to be around. That might be an older adult or teenager thought. But that might be a really like solid road. This might be a highway at this point, right? So trying to practice the self-affirmation, this is like starting off on grass. I still have to till it, and then I got to like pave it. And we really got to work at practicing that. You may not feel the effects of a positive self-affirmation right away. It can take time to really cement into kind of like your behaviors and then start affecting your emotions. So I don't often start with clients saying, hey, how did you feel after that self-affirmation? Because it might not be there yet. That might not be the defining characteristic to be, is this working? Is it not? It's, can we keep it going long enough to really ascertain whether or not this is having an impact on their overall well-being? Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, we'll start.
That's good. Thank you. And so as we go from this, it's how to build self-confidence, right? So in the handout, they have Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Well, thank you. I'm muted.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I've just written this down. I really like your metaphor about, you're saying how this takes time.
Mhm.
And I think as an adult too, it fits as well. But your metaphor about taking the time and like achieving a nice green lawn, I wrote down like achieving a nice green lawn without weeds, because Elkhorn has all these beautiful lawns, right? My husband and I last year were like, we better do that. The neighbors are doing it, so we better, But right. We use a different one, but anyway. But the weeds are kind of like these negative thoughts and negative self-talk. So I mean, that's just probably something I'll use as an analogy with my own kids. And that it can take time.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I just want to interject with that because that was a really good analogy.
And kind of alongside that, one other one that I sometimes use, maybe this fits for other people, is it's the thought of like buying a new sweater. You're trying it on, it's not comfortable yet. It's not your favorite sweater. Your favorite sweater is the one of negative self-thought or negative or doubt or disbelief in ourselves. That one's comfortable, it's easy to wear, it's easy to show people. This new sweater, I'm not sure if it looks good on me yet. I don't know how people might take it in. So the more we try it, the more we get that sweater worn in, the more likely it might become one of my favorite sweaters, or more specifically. Shoot, I was muted. I'm sorry. The more specifically, it might start to become more accessible, more easy to use. It might become more second nature instead of this other path. That doesn't mean we won't have negative thoughts. We absolutely will. But the thought of applying positive thoughts will become an easier, more accessible route.
Yeah. That's a good one with the sweater analogy too. Yeah. See
how it goes.
See how it goes.
Sounds fair.
Because we both get into this. So there's a handout that has the Maslow's hierarchy of needs in front of you. And if you look at the bottom, it says the physical needs and safety. What does my body need to stay healthy? That's very basic. You know, your food, your water, where I'm at, your clothing. Then you go to the next step and you go love and belonging. What do I need to feel cared for and connected to others? So what can others give me that I know that I'm being loved? You know, is it that kiss on the cheek, or is it making dinner, or is it the phone call saying you're doing good? And then the very tip top of that pyramid is the self-esteem and feeling like your best self. What do I need to feel good about myself and happy with my life? I want you to look at this in retrospect to your children, where you're at right now, and kind of think, fill that pyramid out as if you were filling it out for your child with what you know right now. Okay. You can do it in your head, just kind of think it over. Then we're going to go back and we're going to tell you in some ways on how to do that. And then I want you to reevaluate that hierarchy and see what things you can change. And that gives you a little bit as you walk away here tonight, where you can look at to kind of change your outlook and change your behavior a little bit to help your child build with confidence. And I was muted on all of that.
Unmuted, so I think you're
okay.
All right.
I'm keeping it unmuted. Technology, you gotta love it. This is what we try to do on having hybrid, so people don't, if they can't come out, then they understand it. And it's also, we also have a YouTube page and it's uploaded on there. But so in your mind, kind of have that, fill that out in your head, or you can do it right now. And then as Clayton and I start taking you to the next step on how to do some good self-confident building skills within your child. And I am talking in general and saying you, so please understand that is with your child, or it can be with you too. All right. I'm going to go into the first way to start, and it's the very most simple way to do this, very obvious way, is how we talk to our children, right? Is there are many ways to build, and one way is pretty simple, and it's using our words. And there's 16 possible options for you, and there's so many more options out there, but it's recognizing to say, I'm proud of you, or you really worked hard, and you worked hard at mowing the lawn. Thank you. That took some time. I appreciate that. We all make mistakes. It's okay. And the one thing is about building self-confidence, which I'm sure you all know, is if you have a child that is a perfectionist, building self-confidence is extremely hard because they don't want to take risks, because they don't want to make mistakes. They want their own little comfort zone, their own little bubble. And to break that bubble is very difficult. So they do need encouragement. They do need to know it's okay you make mistakes. We want you to. I have 3 boys, and they are very different in personalities, but all 3 of them don't like messing up. And no matter how many times I say, just try it. It's okay. If you make a mistake, we'll fix it. That's no big deal. And they probably saw that with me when they were younger, when they spilt their milk and I freaked out. What are you doing? Don't do that. Or if the dog is peeing on the floor and I freak out, yelling at the dog, they're very apprehensive. So I modeled that for them, and now I need to stop that. Did you want to share?
Yeah. The only couple of things I'd add to that is, one, when we're kind of going through the language of it all, we also want to recognize that one of the really important facets of it is genuineness and authenticity. Kids are so good at sensing when we're not being genuine. And if it's okay to be realistic, it's okay, like in the midst of something that's not going well, to be authentic and communicate how we're feeling about a situation with a kid, not to place the emotion on the kid as a result of like, you're making me feel this way, but more so an expression of I'm feeling frustrated or I'm feeling angry. alongside of that, that can help kids get to understand how to communicate emotions. When we're going for self-confidence building and things like that, like even looking at this list behind it all, we really want to make sure that there's a sense of genuineness, that we're being active listeners when we're utilizing this language. So if we're giving a specific compliment on here, that we're, maybe meeting them at eye level, or maybe we're taking time to make sure that we're doing eye contact with them, or joining in the play that they're doing, whatever the activity might be, and saying like, hey, if they're helping out with like laundry and they're just handing you clothes, like, hey, really thank you for helping, connecting with the kid. That genuineness is typically a standout feature that we see. And then I had one more thing and I forgot what it was.
It'll come back to you.
I will.
Let's keep going. Okay. So the process of how to value your child. So simple, right? They're my child. They're important to me. This is just the natural part. But sometimes we have to look at who they are and accept them for who they are. If they like their hair and mohawk, and it's something that you really don't appreciate, but they love it, that is who they are. That is how they show their expression of themselves. And sometimes that's really hard for us to see past our own insecurities, and they're projecting it outwards.
Yeah, you
might not want to do that. I like that one. The child, whatever the child has done right, provide them with compliments and celebrate. And just like Clayton said, Clay said, is with authenticity, support them, and love your child unconditionally. And again, as I say that, of course, that's a no-brainer. But sometimes when we're stuck in going to work and cleaning the house and make sure dinner's on the table, and it's the last thing, yeah, I love you. Okay, let's go. Slow down a little bit and go, hey, thank you. You know what? Your purple hair, it's really striking. Some sort of compliment to support on their choices. And again, it depends on the age of the child, right? In all circumstances, but it's a matter of slowing down and recognizing. Discipline your child. Discipline helps your child choose appropriate behaviors and development self-control, its structure and limits, and provide skills to self-regulate their behavior in social situations. And we look at that and we kind of go, well, it's setting boundaries, right? Our world sets boundaries on driving, being 16 years old and driving, drinking at 21. We also need to do that as a child is growing and setting certain boundaries for them. And then it expands into the last one where it says independence. So we have to let them grow. We have to let them find their own way. And it does take time and patience, but it also is allowing your child to give choices, which when a child has choices, that builds self-confidence. What do you?
So, no, cool. So when I start talking, will you be able to switch it? Or do you want
have
me
to switch it yourself. It's just.
I just got it.
Thank
So
you.
when I was working up at New Vision, I learned an acronym that I loved and that's kind of carried with me throughout this day. It's called CASA, C-A-S-A, not to be confused with I can't think of the right word.
Civil aviation.
Yes,
safety
thank you.
authority?
Yes, not that. Yes.
I used to work in aviation.
I think there's another CASA. It has to do with like youth justice or youth something. I can't think of the right word. Regardless, CASA stands for commitment, acceptance, security, and attunement. And that was like kind of a guiding fundamental belief up at New Vision about how to really foster attachment with children. The first idea being commitment, that when we have a kid there, that we're going to be committed to working with them, that regardless of what kind of behaviors come up, because we'd have a lot of kids that have a lot of extreme behaviors up there. While we were up there, the idea was that each day, every day, we're going to go in, we're going to continue working with this kid, and we're going to practice acceptance. Acceptance meaning that we may not understand it, we may not agree with it, but we can accept them for who they are and what they are, especially with where they're at this time, because kids come with a lot of different things with them. They might come with problems coming from school, coming from home, coming from friends, a lot of different aspects. There can be troubles. So acceptance is just the act of meeting your kid where they're at. Security at that same time is also understanding that there's still limits. That doesn't mean that there's not structure. Kids thrive in structure. They need structure. We need to be able to set like really clear guidelines. If we didn't practice security up in the woods, some kids would just run out in the woods and then they'd just be lost. And like, that would not be okay. We'd have to make sure they're all right. So there's got to be clear guidelines around that. It's like kind of thinking of it like a home. If we don't know where the boundaries are, we might just keep going further. And then, you know, kids have a lot of emotions inside. They don't know what the limit is. We have to kind of help guide that along to know where their limits are, what their values are. And then ultimately leads to a sense of attunement when we can show up, be committed, be consistent, be predictable, like those first 5 styles of parents, or the first slide that you had. In that kind of structured setting, we can begin to foster some attunement. Alongside of all of that is recognizing that it may not seem like it's working because kids are fickle. They're very fickle. And it's not always clear. There are clear signs when it's not working, right? We might start to see like big changes in personality or substance use or other really like concerning behavior. But when a kid talks back or something like that, that's not to say that the language that we have, that the security or expectation that we have is wrong. We want to listen. We want to make sure. We want to double check. We want to ask them, hey, how's this working for you? But that they may not always walk away with the, yeah, this is working great. This is feeling really good for me, you know, because they're still trying to understand their limits. And we're just being that safe space for them to help them figure that out. Yeah.
I like that. So it's not more about discipline. It's more of like setting boundaries.
Yeah, and they can be somewhat interchangeable sometimes too. Boundaries, absolutely. It's sometimes hard to talk vaguely, but yeah, like boundaries, like understanding like, hey, what interactions are okay and aren't okay in these settings, like wanting to interact with family, but also getting to know what your kids' boundaries are too. What are they okay with? What are they not okay with? And where can we compromise in the middle? Discipline, you know, I mean, there's a lot of conversation about discipline. A lot of people have a lot of different views about discipline. And I would say as long as we're making sure that we have this part of ourselves that's trying to remain committed and attuned with our children, that discipline can go a lot of different directions. That one takes a bit more specific conversation about, I would say, because it also depends on how your kid's responding to it too. It's just being attuned with your kid to know, did this discipline actually help them move in a direction that you know, you and they see as something helpful or not? Yeah.
And sorry, so from what I'm getting from what you're saying is that kind of in your question or comment is really discipline is occurring outside the boundaries. So the boundaries are there to provide that certainty, that security you mentioned, that sort of thing. And then when, you know, going outside that zone of security, those boundary zones, then that's, you know, when we do need to discipline as well, because there are consequences for going outside the boundaries. There's consequences for speeding, or there's consequences for
like walking out,
age, or there's consequences in life.
Absolutely.
So we need to teach them that from a young age.
Absolutely.
As well.
And that can be just setting structure. And that doesn't necessarily mean have to be, so there's sometimes conversations of like what a negative punishment is versus a positive punishment. A negative punishment is taking something away. Up in New Vision, what we would really work on is natural consequences. So anything that we didn't have to impose as a consequence may help somebody learn more efficiently. So I'll try to be more clear. If a kid is, you know, playing on a playground a little more wildly than they should be. There might be in a like, you know, they might be really excited, might be doing a lot, not really aware of their behaviors in that moment. Maybe they, you know, throw a ball too hard and hit another person. That person starts crying or gets angry. Instead of us imposing a restriction or a punishment like, oh, hey, you shouldn't hit kids. You're on timeout now. That would be more of a I can't remember the right term, but that's not a natural consequence. That's us imposing kind of a restriction or a punishment to say, hey, that's not okay behavior, as opposed to the authentic or natural punishment of that other kid's crying. And then our kid might feel bad or feel hurt and then understand that, like, hey, this wasn't okay. I got a little extreme. I should keep myself a little bit more composed. That can work in a lot of different settings. Out in the woods, it was, we had to hang our food in the tree. Otherwise animals would get it. If we didn't hang our food in the tree, animals would get it. That would be the natural consequence. We'd have to maybe make an extra hike to go get other food from an outside source instead of having the food we had ready at our disposal. So that would be a natural consequence. Those typically fall in line with like better learning opportunities because it's a kid making a mistake. Most of our learning, there's a meme that I saw recently. Like we learn like a third from theory, like half or like 50% of the time we learn from doing, and then like 80% of the time it sticks with us when we actually make the mistake and we're in a safe space to make that mistake.
And I like how you said safe space to make the mistake.
Yeah.
And that is what we need to instill in our kids as parents, is that they have that safe space with us to do those mistakes.
Yeah. Yep.
I just want to interject one thing, and I've learned this over time, having a house full of kids and friends and all of this. As a parent, and I tell this to a lot of new parents now because what I've learned over time is you're not with your child 24/7, that you should not always live under the pretense my child will never do that. Because you're not there to know what that child can or will do, either by association or they themselves participate in it. And I mean, I'm not going to go into a horror story, but there was a situation that my kids were not involved, but it involved some kids in the neighborhood, and it had tragic ending. And there was a parent that said, "Oh, my child would never do that," and then they did find evidence that this child did do it. And my thing is, like you've said all along, you've got to listen to your child, and there's two sides to every story, and you have to give them that chance. But I always try and encourage parents, and especially new parents, you're not going to be there 24/7. They're going to give themselves enough rope to hang themselves, but you do have to have consequences, whether you discipline them, I'm not saying beat the child, but maybe they do need that time out, We ended up giving up grounding after my one son jumped out the second story. I mean, twice, And when he was questioned as how did the screen get down there, he looked at both of us and said, "I have no idea." So it's, you have to, like you said, with what you're learning here and hearing, you have to work with your child and figure out what's going to be the best solution so that they can be a good person and survive.
And that's it, surviving in the world. And kind of what Clayton
Was saying is it all depends on the child and who that is and what they're going to take away. And you folks know best on your child. We have another slide here. Some more options. Spend quality time with your child. That helps build their confidence and make it meaningful. And that could be sitting down at dinners and having dinner together, which I don't know about you, but my kids go 24/7, and to sit down at dinner is really difficult to do. So when my boys were younger, I hijacked them in the car and I wouldn't let them out until I was done talking with them. I use that quality time. Also, as Clayton said earlier, being at their level of, they like playing on the game station. So I stink at video games. They laugh at me hysterically, but I'll sit there and I'll play with them just to have that connection and learning what they're learning and what they like to do. Those small little steps can go so far. Help them set goals for themselves and set small goals. And as they meet those goals, make them bigger and bigger. If you set them way up here at the top and they don't make it, they're going to feel like they failed and made a mistake. That's not building their confidence. But once you set the little goals and they're achieving, and you show them how proud they are on achieving those goals as you help them set them, that will build their self-confidence. And encourage
persistence. Sometimes this is a twofold, right? We have the kid that says, well, I'm going to keep doing this. They drive you nuts, but they also are very confident about themselves and who they are and creating that self-assurance. So these 3 steps, 3 processes, including the other ones, are really good. Clayton, too?
Yeah. Anybody familiar with love languages?
Mhm.
Yeah, I would also I'd always recommend getting to know your love language, your kid, well, your own, absolutely, and your kid's love language too, because whereas words of affirmation, words of encouragement can be really helpful for some. Others, it might just be that quality time, as we kind of see there, or acts of service, like doing something alongside of your kid, playing a game with your kid. Those can really help foster connection and attachment. And generally, what we see is kind of best fitting for that is allowing for times for that to always kind of be there throughout a week or every other week, whatever kind of fits best for the family schedule, is making sure that there's these uninterrupted times of connection in forms that fit your kid. So that way we can meet them on their level and help foster that. A lot of confidence comes in the belief that somebody believed in us. That's how we know we're good people, is that we have people around us that know we're good. If we don't have people around us if everybody around us thinks we're a crappy person, we're going to start to think it ourselves. So the belief is very, very important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that brings us back to the Maslow's chart that we said before this. So from what you thought
about before we shared those 6 areas, what would you change different to raise a little bit more confidence in your kids from what we shared? Kind of reevaluate that chart and how you would do things different as you walk out of here tonight. Because, yep, we're sitting here and we're sharing with you. And it's one of those things that I've heard is you read those self-help books and they're great. And then you stick them up on the ledge, and you never look at it again, right? So if you have that chart with you to kind of say, well, this is a goal that I want to reach. This is a goal. Hopefully some of these steps will help you get there. I sure can.
Yeah. This is maybe a bit.
Unmute.
Maybe it's common, but I think it's always important to acknowledge that the bottom of that triangle is essential to reach anything above it. If we don't have the space to have basic needs met, predictability in our day, security, we can't get to love and belonging or self-esteem or anything like that. Or at least it becomes fundamentally a lot harder because our mind, we are wired to worry about just meeting our basic needs. If we're hungry, I'm not here to talk to you about how I feel about myself right now. I need to make sure I'm eating.
how does that go? Hangry?
Hangry, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So always just making sure that bottom of the line is always met before conversations above that start to happen.
That's good. So
There we go. Getting better at this. I'll be an expert by the time we're done. The impact of a confident child. So you work on this with them, and it's going to be a lifelong process. I think even as when you have adult children, you're still going to be there for them, building confidence, probably not as such in a poignant way, but still in relationships and daily conversation. But while you do create that confidence, the impact is hopefully they have less fear and less anxiety, and that can create less worries for them, higher level of self-confidence to avoid giving anxieties, breaking out of a cycle of overthinking. They would be able to explore new subjects and roles and hobbies. And I think the important thing is instill safety in their own environment because they're sure of themselves. Less fear. You feel stronger and more confident and willing to do a little bit more than what you normally would do. So, and that goes to improve motivation. So they can feel that they can set good goals and good dreams, and they can see themselves achieving it.
a child with low confidence probably even wouldn't know what a dream was or a goal to set. And this will help instill that in them and help build competency by teaching them to take the small steps towards reaching those goals. And then they will know what to do in their life as they progress from grade school to middle school to high school to college to adulthood on how to set goals and be more sure of themselves as they do that. And they're more resilient. So if the setback happens in their life, they know how to push through that, the skill set to push through that, not just pull up your bootstraps and walk. You got to understand that there's feelings and emotions, and they're sure of themselves that they can do that and walk through that. Anything you want to?
One of the neat features that I'm recalling from back up at New Vision, we had there were like 4 pillars to the program, 2 of which were called the Mastery Program and the Canine Program. So we had a canine in the group that one of the group members would, look out after, feed, walk, go to the bathroom, kind of throughout the week. Alongside of that canine program, there was also something called Mastery, which is like just working with the kid, trying to find one identifiable skill to work on over time, but stay consistent with. So some kids would take up like a guitar lesson or something like that. So they'd bring a, pretty makeshift guitar out in the woods. Some kids would really focus on trying to how to make fires, fishing, whatever it might be. But the cool things from those was this concept known as flow. I'm in love with flow. I think flow is one of the coolest things that can be talked about, because flow is about a state of mind where we hit something that's just challenging enough, but we also feel just prepared enough to engage in. So the most similar way I can figured out how to talk about it is talking about like a runner's high. If you ever talk to a runner, they might talk about this like zone that they get in when they're going through the run. They may not hit it right away. It might take a couple minutes, but they finally get into this place where it's just, everything just feels fluid. The more times we can get into hitting this state of flow, the more help that it has with like creativity, boosting self-confidence and belief in ourselves that we are capable of doing something. And it also broadens up the activities that we have that we think we could tackle in life. So what is sometimes really helpful to find is working with your kid to identify what is something that they can kind of ongoingly work on as a separate task, something that's not necessarily school related, or, that isn't even almost, it has to be a challenge. It's not something that comes easy. If it's easy, then we're going to get bored doing it. We need to have it occupy some space in our mind and enough challenge to keep us engaged with it, but not so much that we have distress from it. And that can be hard to find, but kind of like when we talk about breaking things into small steps, that's what can help it out a lot easier. Just taking a moment to really break it down and just keep working on it, keep engaging. Even if it doesn't happen right away, we can get into that space where it feels a little bit more accessible. So look up flow. Flow is really cool.
Thank you. I like that.
I like the acronyms when they're easy.
Yeah.
I like acronyms when they're easy. Another way impact is improved relationships. So as your child grows into more self-confidence, you may find that the relationship between you and your child may grow. The relationship between their peers may grow, siblings, and because they create a confidence that they know that they can handle a conversation or handle that interaction, that social anxiety is improving. When someone is fully present, they can also see that maybe some other child is having trouble with confidence. They may not know that it's not confidence, but they may go, oh, that child looks sad. I'm going to go over there and talk and start building confidence in that child. So it's that paying it forward aspect. Also, by doing all that, they're creating their authentic self. And again, that goes to one of the slides that we talked to, why you value your child. You value them because they are who they are. And that's what sometimes we forget to look at and see. All good on that one, huh? So that's the end. Some key points and key takeaways is you can only control your thoughts and actions. Feelings are the result of that. Building confidence provides protection, self-assurance, face obstacles, skills to interact with others and deal with unexpected difficulties. Disciplining thoughts can create more self-confidence. Affirmations, values, and disciplines give interdependence to your child, are ways to build confidence. Set goals, encourage persistence, and spend time with your child builds confidence. And the impact of building confidence is less fear and anxiety, improved motivation, relationships, and authentic self, and their resilience. Any questions? Any feedback? Yes.
I wanted to just, from what I see, I think it's a lot of, we have like, sometimes we have helicopter planes and I was one. And I think I've learned that it's important to let your child struggle and, you know, tell them life is hard. And I know it's hard and I can't change that part of it, but I can be there for you and I'm here for you. But that part where your child is struggling is important because when you can help them problem solve through it, but that struggle is super important because that's what builds confidence, and that's what they build on is that success of working through that struggle. And so a lot of new parents, you just want to fix it for them, you know, because they want to make it comfortable. And it's important for your child to struggle and be uncomfortable and be okay with those feelings of uncomfortable inside and going, oh, nothing's happening to me. I know this icky feeling, but no pianos are falling from the ceiling because of it. So I think that's one part of something I learned along the way as a parent.
I like that, Esther. I've always heard the analogy as that as a parent, and again, it's the age of the child, but I'm their guardrails. You know, I'm just there so they can stay on the course and I can bump them back in if they need to. Otherwise, just as long as they don't crash and burn, and then that'd be really bad. So that's what I kind of use that analogy a little bit.
I think that goes to the natural consequences, you know, if your child leaves their binder at home, you know, that's a natural consequence. What will happen? You know, don't always rescue them right away. You know, make them struggle a little bit before you
Bring it after lunch.
School. Yeah. Make them struggle a little bit so that that lesson is in there. You know, lessons are learned.
And as one of our guests said, you know, we also have to realize our children aren't perfect. We're not perfect. And when she shared that, my oldest son, and it was here at Tibbetts, he got a detention. And I'm like, that can't be. He's great. What do you mean? I literally was that parent. And then I looked and I'm like, oh, he didn't do his assignment. And I have to see him for who he is. And to this day, he is the last minute get done, even at 20-something years old. He's not timely at all. And I had to look at my child and value him for who he is. And he had to do that consequence. And that was a big turning point for me. Even after 16 years, 17 years, 14 years, I still have that feeling going, yep, I was that parent and I have to take a step back and look at myself and my kids. Yeah.
Our oldest is 18, and I reminded him the other day, we sat and talked to him, like, we don't necessarily, I don't want to use the word nagging, but we don't keep bringing these things up because we want to be that parent and make sure you're straight and narrow, but you've lived it. And I try and remind him, like, we want you to know because we've lived it, and sometimes we don't want you to follow that path or that mistake that we already made, because we know you're going to make some of the same mistakes, but don't forget, we've lived life too. So we are here to answer those questions and be a guardrail. You know, he's trying to buy his first car.
Oh, yeah.
Not a used one, but a nice one. So it's like we're trying to guide him, but not, he has to do it on his own, but we've been there. So we're information bank.
Yes. And sometimes, especially at teenagers, that's hard. That's hard. Well, thank you. very much for coming. We do have our next event is at Jackson School, and it's talking about raising a lifelong learner. And there's 2 teachers at Jackson that it will probably be on the board to ask any questions on that. And I'll have a presentation and resources from that as well. So hopefully we'll see you there. Thank you. Oh, yes.
Sorry, I'll just make another comment. I know that as parents, one of the most difficult things we deal with is when your child comes home and they're having trouble with another kid or a bullying situation or getting punched, which I've had happen multiple times to my child. And, you know, when this first started happening, and we're talking elementary school, I think it first started happening in 3rd grade, 2nd, 3rd grade. Now he's in 5th grade, and it just happened last week. But, you know, I remember when this first started happening, or, you know, if kids are being mean or whatever, I had to put the bear in the den. And so I'm Googling, how does a parent, you know, handle this situation and stuff. And I must have come across some pretty great websites, because what I do with my children is I ask them. So it says, rather than, you know, wanting to rescue them, solve the problem for them, whatever. So we take a step back and listen. How did that make you feel? You know, and then I try to empower them by saying, how do you want to handle this situation? Whether it's, do you want me to speak to the teacher, or do you want me to speak to the school? Should we just make a note of it for now? I mean, he was getting teased on the bus for like a while and having problems on the bus, but, you know, he just was dealing with it. And I just waited for him to tell me if he needed my intervention.
Yep.
And sometimes I have had to intervene, you know, with him or on behalf of him, and other times not. You know, this incident that happened last week, I actually got a call from the school at work, you know, from the vice principal, letting me know what happened so that I wouldn't be alarmed when he came home, and so he shared with me what happened, and it was an innocent type of event. What happened? They were playing basketball, and my son's really tall. He came down on another kid, and that kid got hurt, but misinterpreted as intentional from my child, and so punched him, you know, in the neck, which could have been severe. But, you know, so I had this knowledge, and then he comes home from school, and I said, you know, like I do every day, is anything, you know, how was your day? Anything happened at school today? You know, I lost my tooth, you know, so he, you know, he's telling me about that and this and that. So then later on, are you sure did anything happen today? Again, like at dinner time, anything else happened today? You know, I was asking my younger one as well. Nothing. Didn't say anything. And then before bed, I said, you know, I got a call from school today. Man, you know, this, that. So we talked about it. He's like, oh, I forgot. So I was like, at first I'm like, are you keeping secrets? You know, like I want to know what's going on at school. I don't know unless you tell me. But then I was like, you know, and he's getting resilient. He's becoming more resilient. So then I was like, woohoo. You know, where some parents might pull their kid out of school and, oh, you can't go there anymore.
Right.
And, you know, so, I mean, that helps anyone else either listening online or at home. But yeah, it's just like, you know, whenever anything happens up at school, you know, and there's a bullying, it's even if it's at the park or whatever, you're just, you know,
Yep.
Where's your parent, you know? But it's like trying to let the kids work it out, because they're going to have bullies in the workplace, and
This
you know,
will carry on with them throughout their
situations.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
you
And
know,
it's not easy.
I'm not saying that we should have a tolerance to it, because I do feel the district is very strongly opposed to it in the district and stuff like that, because it can get severe. But it's just kind of giving our kids the chance to again work through that uncomfortable situation, and they're probably more resilient than we are, to be honest.
But I noticed, like with my own kids, they notice and they learn from our reactions.
Yep.
So if we get all fired up, they're gonna get fired up.
Yep.
Whereas if it's hard to do, but if we come at them like you did, the calm, how do we resolve this? They kind of learn and do the same thing too. Like I have toddlers all day, and when it falls, if I right away run to them and panic, they do the same. But if we try and keep a level head and talk to them like, how are we going to fix this? How should we handle this? And I think they feed off of that, so that you created that resilience for them.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Thanks, Google.
Well, thank you all for a great night. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate any feedback you are willing to give. And I hopefully will see you at some in conversation events. Have a good night.